on December 27th, an odd night to put on anything, but I'm sure there's nothing on television whatsoever, so I'm really glad to have you here. And to be talking about these three really important concepts that are, as I say in the title, precious to our culture. They're treasured. I think we think of our Western culture as being what it is because of equality and liberty and fraternity, those three great slogans from the French Revolution, which is where I've pinched them from. I think we treasure them, we also use them rhetorically. If you can mount an argument that something will give greater liberty or greater equality, then, or perhaps now the community idea with fraternity, we'll come to that in the third lecture, that's perhaps the most difficult and complex one for us, but if you can argue, at least for the first two, over your particular cause, then you've pretty much got it. You've made a sale, you've made a knockdown argument. You even see these things used in advertising, very interestingly. So that's the outline of the series. I've actually got them in the wrong order. I believe it's meant to be liberty, equality, fraternity, not the other way, not equality, liberty, but you'll forgive me for my post-Christmas haze on that one. Now, what I would like to do in this series is to try and recapture these great concepts, these foundational political and much treasured political concepts for Christianity by giving them a theological account, by showing how they emerge from Christian theology. In fact, I would like to claim boldly that without God there can be no true liberty, equality or fraternity for human beings, and that in fact the banishment of God from political discussion of equality, fraternity and liberty is very dangerous for those concepts, because they then become empty ciphers into which you can pour any liquid that you like. Now, why does this matter? Well, of course, it's much more than just asking us who we should vote for. There are three reasons that I think it's important for us to consider these three foundational concepts. And the first one is to consider the concepts of politics, is to consider the very nature of authority in human affairs and the very shape of human life together. Who is in charge? It's a fundamental human question with potentially dangerous consequences. The Christian gospel itself makes a political statement. It makes a statement about authority. Jesus is Lord. That is the fundamental Christian datum. That's where Christians begin. It's a statement about authority which conditions everything that Christians will think about politics, or ought to. And so Christians have a stake in the discussion about authority in human affairs, since the Christian gospel itself makes a huge claim about authority in political and social life. So, secondly, political ideas have tremendous power to shape the way millions of human beings think and live. This is no less true in Australia than it is in North Korea. For example, the idea of human rights is a philosophical notion endorsed not just by governments but also by people in the street who consider themselves to have inherent and inalienable human rights. And we act on the basis of our understanding that these rights are attached to us in some way, that some property that I have is these rights, and I can make claims against other people, or I can make claims on other people on the basis of these things called rights that attach to me somehow. Thirdly, the third reason is historical. For more than 1,000 years, power and authority have been interpreted from a Christian point of view, rightly or wrongly. In fact, going way back till about 325 or so AD. So it's a very, very ancient discussion, this idea of the Christian point of view, thinking of politics through this particular lens, power and authority through this particular lens. But we've reached a moment in the history of what we might loosely call the West, or Christendom, when a whole culture has fairly deliberately pulled away from its roots in the soil of Christianity and is determined to go it alone. Religious talk has been bracketed out of the public domain. For example, when church leaders are shouted down by politicians and told to stick to talking about God within the faux Gothic sandstone walls of their cathedrals. So Christians are told, church leaders are told, shut up, get out of the public square, particularly when what they're saying contradicts the policies of the particular party that the politician comes from, interestingly. But I would say this is an act of colossal cultural amnesia. What the secularisers forget is that the foundational concepts of secular politics, notions like freedom and equality and the brotherhood of man, have their origins in Christian theology, where they are established in relation to the sovereign Lord and his future eternal rule. That's where they meaningfully come from. That's their story. If you take away that story, then where do the concepts sit? Where do they come from? Instead, what we have now is the secular hymn of John Lennon. Imagine a world with no religion, no hell below us, above us only sky, a brotherhood of man, a borderless globe, and a godless heaven. Interestingly, John Lennon also imagined no possessions, but he had warehouses full of Rolls Royces and massive amounts of possessions, so he wasn't imagining no possessions, that's for sure. However, for many people, secularism tastes very dry on the tongue. It's a strange kind of faith. It's a sort of operating principle for society, but it doesn't give you a lot to dream. And there is a faint but still lingering memory that despite their flaws, the churches had something that we are now missing. There's a sort of wistfulness about the churches. So you see articles written even by atheists. There's a great article by Matthew Paris, an atheist who was writing in the Times, I believe, just a few years ago. He was talking about Africa. And he was saying that even as an atheist, I can see that the hope for social reform in Malawi, which is the country he was in, lies with people of faith, because I can see that they have a passion to reform their society, to do good by other people, and it comes from somewhere. You can see it in Alain de Botton, who wrote a book called Religion for Atheists, and actually started, I believe, a church for atheists in London. Whether anyone actually goes to this church or not, I don't know. A.C. Grayling wrote a book, a Bible for an atheist's Bible, which of course was really written, well, I mean, it was really, it's nothing quite so egotistical as someone who would write their own Bible in that some way, but so he did. The secularisation of authority and power began in the Enlightenment, which found its political fulfilment in the revolutions of France and the United States of America. And we take them as our slogan for these three talks, their slogan, Égalité, Liberté, excuse my French, and Fraternity, and imagine for a minute that we can recapture them for the Christian gospel. So in doing so, we'll be right in the front lines of a war to the death of what it means to be a human being. I'd like to add too, before as a way of introducing the series, that theology is everywhere. This is one of the working assumptions that I work with here in thinking about these concepts, that there is very, very rarely a true secularism or a true atheism, that we need metaphysics at some level. I think what we've got in human rights is a kind of religion, a bunch of myths, if you like, that hang there somewhere. They're metaphysical concepts. They just are plucked out of the sky, and they operate as a kind of faith. You need to have faith in them for them to work. And so what I want to sort of challenge with secularism is that it can do without myth-making or metaphysics, the idea that there is something up there, something beyond the physical that it needs to depend on. But we can talk about that and explore that a little bit later. And that's why my challenge would be to the secularists is not theology is better than no theology, but which theology is more convincing? Because I think theology, Christian theology, or a secularist or a liberal theology we have to have theology. We end up making theologies. You notice this with nationalism. Interestingly, I always use Peter Fitzsimons as an example because it's so obvious with him that the more atheist he gets, the more nationalistic he gets, because you have to replace Christianity or a religion with some other religion. His religion is not atheism, his religion is Australia. And his kind of ethics is drawn from his worship of the national ideal in his version. But more of that perhaps a bit later. Well, let me talk about equality. So after liberty, equality may be of all political concepts the most adored. Maybe it's a toss-up. We could talk about which one is perhaps more dear to the hearts of secular Western liberal citizens. It's part of the self-mythology of Western societies that they see themselves as treating their citizens with equality. The struggle for equality is part of the story we tell ourselves as defining what we most like about our society. The noted political theorist from the United States, Ronald Dworkin, have I got his name there? Dworkin, writes, "No government is legitimate that does not show equal concern for the fate of all those citizens over whom it claims dominion and from whom it claims allegiance. Equal concern," he says, "is the sovereign virtue of political community." So no government is legitimate that does not show equal concern for the fate of all those citizens over whom it claims dominion and from whom it claims allegiance. Equal concern then is the sovereign virtue. In other words, the highest good that a society can pursue for Dworkin is the equality of its citizenry. Equality is certainly a very popular idea. In Australia, which shares the New World spirit, opposed to class-bound Europe with America, in Australia, we fantasise that we are, of course, an egalitarian society. We love that idea. Equality equals a fair go. It is fair dinkum. That's equality, isn't it? It just feels right to count people as equals and not by accident of birth superior or inferior to one another. And so we call everyone on a first name basis, or even Baz, Daz, Shaz, Gaz, Maz and Kaz if we can. I actually performed a wedding which was do you, Shaz, take you, Baz. Daz was. Daz and Shaz, Dazza and Shazza. Wonderful. And